All right, guys, I'm in a talkative mood, and I just got back from a college campus, and wow, it's unbelievable. I think the difference was in the '60s, the um, foment was coming from the students. I think, unless there was some big psychological operation going on behind the scenes that has yet to be fully delineated. But now the foment and the craziness is coming from the professors, the academic departments, I assume the administrators. I'm not going to mention the school, and I'm not going to mention the program, and I'm certainly not going to mention the student. Students should always be given the benefit of the doubt. Um, and everybody, as Bill Clinton used to say, everybody's has a chance to reform or something. I forget what he said. That was one of the best things he ever said. But anyway, I went to a presentation by a student, and this thing was seriously Looney Tunes. On one level, and I will reveal this little bit, it was a graduate program. This was not first year, kids. This was like somebody that's theoretically had a degree and is now in graduate school. And I'm going to guess the quality of intellectual rigor on college campuses, because I really haven't been on one, and I shouldn't use this one sample, but if this is an example, it's gone way down. And the topic was, like I said, just wackadoodle, just crazy. And it made me think about, and the reason I'm doing this particular call is I was talking with the director of the program, and I just made, kind of a joke, kind of a serious thing as we were walking in. I didn't even know what the presentation was going to be. I was talking about the history of visual anthropology. Well, you'll never be able to guess, but I was talking about the history of visual anthropology and how it first got started talked about maybe 45 years ago. And it's, and he says, yeah, it's still trying to catch on. And I said, the academy moves slowly. And he just froze like a deer in the headlights. It was if I had said to a Catholic priest, let's do a black mass next Wednesday. You know what I mean? His physical reaction was just that. And it reminded me of how narrow college campuses are on a social level, right? It's a tiny little world, really. The faculties are even tinier. The departments are tinier still. And if you're a young fellow or woman and aren't tenured, you're literally walking the razor's edge every day, hoping that you don't make some drastic career destroying mistake. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible system. So this put in my mind the concept of cults, cults, cults. And when we think of cults, we think in terms of, some kind of crazy diabolical thing. But cult really is actually a very broad word. It's in our word culture. It's in our word agriculture. And all that a cult is on the neutral level is just simply a collection, a gathering of people, a community of people, an aggregation of people who are sharing the same beliefs, well, the same continuum of beliefs and aspirations. Everybody there's some variety allowed within culture. Obviously, not everybody can be a fireman, right? So some people want to be firemen, some people want to be nurses. But it's a closed system. Like, if you grew up in, say a blue collar neighborhood in the 1950s, your aspiration was not to become a gender studies professor. Let's just say that, right? What is a culture? A group of people. They share beliefs, they share understandings, they share experiences, they live within a spectrum of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. This is absolutely natural, normal, and it's got to be this way. There's no other way to organize human beings, right? So my point is, everything's a cult. Every gathering, even if you get two people together, you got a cult going on. All right. Now, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So what we have to look at is the difference between good cults and bad cults, and realize there's a continuum and a spectrum. There's malignant cults. And then there's cults that are a little weird, maybe, just a little strange. They're all cults are strange to the people outside them. Let's face that. And then there are sort of positive cults, and it's important to know the distinctions so that you can recognize the bad ones. And I think, because we don't have all the time in the world and we need to be able to assess things rapidly, I think the simplest way to identify a malignant cult is the fact that discussion is not permitted. Okay. Now, if the house is burning down, yeah, discussion is not permitted. Everybody get out of the house, right? If the enemy is coming over the hill, no discussion, pick up the guns and start shooting, right? I mean, there are certain situations where there's no time for discussion, and there's no debate or philosophical investigation. But in the normal course of life's events and living, there should be the ability to ask questions and discuss things and present bodies of evidence. Not even necessarily conclusions, but hey, here's this body of evidence. But in a malignant cult, you can't even bring up factual evidence, right? So this to me is the great divider. It makes it really simple. It makes it really easy to determine whether a cult is benign or malignant. And of course, nothing's perfect. There's always some flaws here and there. Some flaws are permittable. If people wear weird clothes, okay, that's a permittable fault. If people think abusing children is okay, that's a capital offense. That's not permittable. So yeah. So there's malignant and there's benign. And all you need to know, whether they are engaged in overtly malignant activities or not yet, because my experience is every totalitarian, authoritarian cult eventually gets involved in criminal activity. And I don't mean, selling weed. I mean, injuring people. So if you want to know, hey, am I in a malignant cult? Is that a malignant cult? Am I supporting a malignant cult? All you have to know is, are they allowing free and open discussion of facts? We won't even get into opinion. We won't even get into self-expression. A lot of this is an interesting thing to me. A lot of people think the First Amendment is about expression. I want to express myself. I should be free to express myself. No. I mean, yes, of course you should be. Why not? Who cares what, at the end of the day, who cares what anybody has to say about anything? But the reason to have free speech is a survival issue, right? It's a survival and maybe a life improvement issue. You see something that's dangerous, you see something that's wrong, and you have the ability, the right, without, being shut down or locked up, to say what you've seen, right? So First Amendment, man, it's got power way beyond any individual's right to free expression, which I think it's absurd to restrict people's right to free expression. That's just lunacy. Of course, it's done all the time, but really, you need to see deeper. You need to see deeper into the First Amendment, what's in there, what it's for. So any group that does not permit the open discussion of fact is a malignant cult. Boom, done. You don't need to go any further. Okay. They may not have engaged in anything horrible yet. But what happens is, you got this body of people, they're true believers, and we're all true believers of something. You have this body of people, they're all true believers. Their entire social life revolves around this particular group. Being exiled from a group is a punishment worse than death for human beings in some ways. That was the great punishment in ancient Greece. They wouldn't put you in jail. They would say, get out, get off the island or the peninsula, and don't ever come back. So all your family, all your friends, all your entertainment, all your everything, your whole net. It was kind of like the COVID era, right? Where everybody was exiled from life. That was pretty painful. Imagine that being permanent and you're physically removed and there is no Zoom. So malignant. So in a social grouping that it's malignant, a malignant cult, somebody will, or some cabal within the cult will take it over, and sure as shooting will use it for their own nefarious ends, and they will leverage that prohibition on the free expression, the open discussion of facts and interpretations of those facts. So, what would be an example of a cult? Well, I'm sorry to say, these at least this college, and I think they're all this way, operate on a cult-like basis. A malignant. Okay, let me be specific, because every human gathering is, even, we have the word cult in agriculture, right? Why? Why is it in there? Because it's not just the tractors and the fertilizer that make the crops possible, right? It's a culture of human beings that have decided and chosen to live in a certain way according to a certain code. There's a code of agriculture. You can't wait to plant. You got to plant at the right time of the year. You can't wait to harvest. You can't harvest earlier than you want to, unless you're using Roundup to desiccate the crop and poison it so that you can save a few bucks on the harvesting. That's a whole different issue. But in the normal core, in a healthy agricultural culture, one agrees to live according to a certain kind of code of operation. So cults are everywhere. But there are malignant cults, and I would say that academia has become a malignant cult. It is free speech, what we're calling free speech, what we're underestimating as free speech, is a major issue on college campuses now. Free speech is not permitted on college campuses now. If you're a student, you'll be shunned, perhaps punished. If you're an academic, you'll have your career interrupted, if not destroyed, simply for raising bodies of fact and alternative interpretations of bodies of fact. So our college campuses have become malignant cults, and they are doing malignant things. For example, coercing young men and women to get the experimental injection. Don't call it a vaccine, because the makers don't call it a vaccine. It's experimental gene therapy. And if you knew the science behind it, you know why I'm doing this. They compelled an entire generation of young men and women, coerced them into participating in a medical experiment, which had known risks. I mean, we knew within weeks after they started rolling out those injections that there was something drastically wrong with their safety profile. And that's a cult, right? None of the news, if you can go to the VAERS database, which the government runs, and read it, or go to something like OpenVAERS, VAERS.com. There's no debate. This thing is the most damaging, destructive, injectable therapy in the recorded history of mankind. We don't have anything even close to as bad as this is. But if you're on it, but the cult of the current cults, cult setting, atmosphere on college campuses, enabled these administrators at many, many schools to coerce young men and women into receiving. I mean, just think about this, and I'll keep repeating this over and over again every day if I have to. Coerced young men and women into receiving an experimental, known to be dangerous than acceptable, experimental medical procedure as a condition for continuing their education. I mean, it doesn't get any, it can get darker, it can get worse. But you're now way down the end of spectrum of crimes against humanity. Universities, malignant cults. Got this local government, for the most part, a malignant cult. So we're certainly especially within specific parties. Like, if you're in, for instance, the Democratic Party, apparently you can't point out that Joseph Biden is in a state of pre-dementia, if not full-blown dementia. You're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to say that his family is possibly, and this is quite an accomplishment, you have to take your hat off to him and his family, possibly the most corrupt people ever to find themselves in the White House. Now, you may not like Donald Trump, and I'm certainly not a fan. Haven't been a fan since the 1970s. I didn't just discover him when he ran for president. Very aware of everything about him and was never a fan. But he's a choir boy compared to their criminality. But and this is all documented, right? This is all documented. But you're not allowed, if you're in that cult, that malignant, and it is a malignant cult, because what did the Democratic Party do? They were on the vanguard of people censoring scientists, doctors, patients, when it came to the coerced medical experiment. So our local governments, our political parties, our academics are malignant cults. I think the case can be made that large sections of the Catholic Church ran or continue to run. I don't know what they're doing now, but we certainly know what they were up to. That's obviously a malignant cult. And that's another example of something you were not allowed to talk about. So these malignant cults are everywhere. They have a veneer of respectability, and millions of people participate in them without a second thought. And I would say two things again, is in summary: every collection of people, even if it's just a couple, is a cult. That's the way human beings, work as a unit, right? But there is a difference between a benign cult, a positive cult, and a malignant cult. And the dividing line is are facts allowed to be presented? Are facts examined? Are facts considered? Are interpretations of those facts allowed to be presented? If not, you are in a malignant cult. And whether it is engaged in criminal anti-human activity or not yet is irrelevant. They've already crossed the Rubicon. They've become malignant. They're a cult. They're bad. So anyway, just wanted to talk this out while I was thinking about it. Writing is such hard work, but talking is easy, especially for an Irishman.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.